the mausoleum of Emperor Qianlong of the Qing Dynasty in China. As the emperor who held power for the longest time in Chinese history and had great achievements, his mausoleum is magnificent. There are carved Buddha statues and sculptures on the walls of the underground palace, just like a Buddhist hall. In 1928, an army stationed nearby robbed the tomb and looted almost all its treasures. And this is the story of this emperor and his mausoleum. On the outskirts of Zunhua City, Hebei Province, China, lies a grand royal cemetery of the Qing Dynasty, which is the final resting place of 5 of the 12 Qing emperors. Among them is Emperor Qianlong, whose tomb is at this location. In 1735, 24-year-old Hongli ascended the throne and became the 6th emperor of the Qing Dynasty, with the reign title Qianlong. The young emperor corrected many of his father's harsh policies and measures. He reduced taxes on the people and also implemented policies to encourage farmers to convert wasteland into farmland to increase food production. As a result, the country's population increased rapidly. When Qianlong ascended the throne, China's population was about 140 million. By 1795, after 60 years of his rule, China's population reached 300 million, while the world's population was about 1 billion. 8 years after taking the throne, he ordered the construction of this mausoleum. The layout of the imperial tombs of the Qing Dynasty completely imitated those of the previous Ming Dynasty, and this one is no exception. We can see from the air that the mausoleum consists of 2 courtyards, front and rear. The one in the front is where ceremonies took place, and the one in the back is the resting place of the deceased emperor. During the middle period of Emperor Qianlong's rule, business prospered and government revenue increased significantly. At the same time, he also put down domestic armed rebellions many times. During his reign, the prosperity of the Qing Dynasty reached its peak, and people called this period the Golden Age. However, in the later years of Emperor Qianlong's reign, serious corruption emerged in the government. Also, he spent a lot of money to build many palaces and gardens, and the burden on the people became increasingly heavy. It was from this time that the Qing Dynasty began to decline. In 1799, Emperor Qianlong passed away at the age of 89, ending his 63-year rule. As the emperor who has held the highest power in the country for the longest time in Chinese history, people generally think highly of him. In 1912, the rule of the Qing Dynasty ended. China fell into decades of chaos, and the royal tombs were no longer well protected. In 1928, about 130 years after Emperor Qianlong's funeral, an army stationed nearby, led by Commander Sun Dianying, entered the royal cemetery and looted 2 tombs, including this one. Below this arch is the entrance to the underground palace, which is very shallow. only a few meters from the ground. This arched tunnel was originally fully sealed with bricks. The soldiers who robbed the tomb dug a hole that could only accommodate one person to pass through and then reached the tomb gate. If you think the two stone pillars in the middle are very incongruous, you are right, because they were not here when they built the tomb gate in the first place. However, after the construction, people found that the door frame was at risk of collapse, so they took reinforcement measures like these. Emperor Qianlong was a devout Buddhist, so every stone in the underground palace was engraved with Buddha statues and Buddhist scriptures. Even every stone door has a Buddha statue on it. According to experts, the Sanskrit and Tibetan Buddhist scriptures on the walls exceed 30,000 characters, but no one can fully decipher the content. These green marks on the walls indicate serious water seepage in the underground palace. The total length of the underground palace is 54 meters, with 3 tomb chambers in the front, middle, and back. This layout also copies the imperial tombs of the Ming Dynasty. After the funeral of Emperor Qianlong, these stone doors were closed. In 1928, those soldiers successfully opened the first 3 stone doors, but they tried everything and still couldn't open the 4th door. So, in the end, they used explosives to blow up the stone doors. As we can see today, they blew the stone door on the left into several pieces. The door on the right is still intact. That's how they entered the back chamber. There were originally 6 coffins in this chamber, belonging to Qianlong, his 2 empresses, and 3 concubines. According to the funeral customs of the Qing Dynasty, burial objects were all inside the coffins. Therefore, when the soldiers entered this tomb chamber, they chopped up the coffins with their weapons and tools, dragged the bodies out, and robbed the treasures inside. Due to the water seepage issue mentioned earlier, several feet of water and mud were in the tomb chamber, and they just left those bodies' remains in the muddy water. The tomb robbery lasted for 7 days. This explosive news soon shocked the whole country. Puyi, the last emperor of the Qing Dynasty, who had abdicated at that time, immediately sent former Qing Dynasty officials to clean up the mess and asked the government to punish the perpetrators. After those personnel arrived, it was impossible to tell which remains belonged to Qianlong and which belonged to the concubines. So they had to put them all into one single coffin, which was the big coffin in the middle. In other words, the remains of Emperor Qianlong and his concubines are now in this coffin altogether. The military commander who directed this tomb robbery bribed the top government officials with many treasures looted from the tombs, hoping to avoid being held accountable. In the end, he did get away with it, as if the tomb robbery never happened. Since the Qing Dynasty was at its peak when Qianlong passed away, many priceless treasures must be in his tomb. But it is now impossible to figure out what treasures were once in there and where they are today. As mentioned earlier, this army robbed 2 tombs. In addition to this one, the other one was the tomb of Emperor Dowager Cixi, and we will talk about what happened to that tomb in the next episode.